Please rise for Her Majesty the Queen.
Nathaniel, please. Thank you. Please sit.
Jonathan, är den här på? Your Majesty the Queen, Speakers of Parliament, Presidents, Excellencies, fellow parliamentarians, dear guests, dear friends. It is a profound honor and privilege to welcome you all here today on behalf of the Swedish delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe and the OSCE Delegation, who are proud to co-host this important meeting. Russia's full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine has now raged for nearly 4 years, since that fateful morning in February 2022. The Russian violations in Crimea and Donbass for even longer, for more than 10 years. This war remains at the very heart of our debates and daily discussions. It is a war that Ukrainians are fighting with their lives and their courage, yet a war being fought for all of us, for freedom, for the rule of law, for democracy, and for Europe. Time and again, we stand in admiration and deep humility before the extraordinary resilience and unbreakable spirit of the Ukrainian people. It is, however, very hard for us to imagine the situation for the Ukrainians. Even less possible to try to imagine the daily life of parents, relatives, and friends of these children that is in the center of today's meeting, the abducted Ukrainian children. Among all the atrocities, this cynical and particularly cruel part of the Russian warfare is something that affects us all in our core. So for our delegations to get the opportunity to host a seminar on this particular topic is a big honor, privilege, and most of all, a responsibility. With those words, once again, welcome to this important meeting, and I welcome the Swedish Speaker of Parliament up to the podium for his address, followed by the Ukrainian Speaker of Parliament. Thank you.
Your Majesty, fellow speakers, excellencies, members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to welcome you all to the Riksdag and to this seminar, which is a side event to the 4th Parliamentary Summit of the International Crimea Platform, where a summit that we just concluded and where almost 70 delegations from 70 countries around the world participated to discuss the issue of Crimea and the wider issue of supporting Ukraine. At this side event, we will discuss the fate of the abducted Ukrainian children and the efforts to bring them home. We're especially honored that Her Majesty the Queen of Sweden wanted to join us today. Your Majesty, you have for decades been a champion of children's rights and has, not least through your Childhood Foundation, touched the lives of thousands of children. Your Majesty, ladies and gentlemen, of all the atrocities, of all the crimes of Russia's brutal war against Ukraine, the kidnapping of thousands of children counts among the most cruel. It is difficult to imagine the suffering and despair experienced by these Ukrainian children and to fathom the extent of their homesickness. Are they even aware of our attempts to shed light on their destiny and bring them home? Perhaps only someone who has shared their plight could truly understand and express their feelings. That is why I want to read you a poem by Ukraine's national poet Taras Shevchenko, who experienced a decade of forced exile in Russia. His words give us an idea of what is going on in the hearts and minds of those poor children. As the sun sets and hills grow dark, as the birdsong ends and fields fall silent, as the people laugh and take their rest, I watch. My heart hurries to the twilit gardens of Ukraine, and I hurry. Oh, how I hurry with my thoughts as my heart yearns for rest. As the fields grow dark, as the groves grow dark, as the hills grow dark, I see a star and I weep. Hey, you star, have you reached Ukraine? Do dark eyes scar the blue sky for you, or don't they care? May they sleep if they don't. May they know nothing of my fate. With those words, once again, I wish you a warm welcome to this seminar. Thank you.
Your Majesty, dear Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation to address your esteemed and important gathering. First of all, allow me to express my gratitude for the attention that the government, the Riksdag, and of course the royal family of Sweden devote to the issues of Ukrainian children abducted by Russia. Today, we have gathered to draw attention to one of the gravest crimes that Russia continues to commit against Ukraine: the systematic abduction, deportation, and illegal detention of the Ukrainian children. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, according to official data, around 20,000 children have been abducted. In 2025, Russia expanded the network of institutions on their territory and on the temporarily occupied Ukraine lands that in one way or another are involved in the illegal removal of our children. According to studies by Yale University, 210 facilities has been identified to which the Russia Federation transfers abducted Ukrainian children. Russia is tearing Ukrainian families apart. It is depriving children to their culture, language, past, and therefore their future. And then it displays them in catalogs as if for sale. We've been even received cynical proposal to exchange our children for captured Russian soldiers. This is not merely deportation. This is a crime against the future of Ukraine nation. Dear friends, the return of Ukrainian children is not about politics. It is about humanity. Every child abducted by Russia must return home unconditionally and without delay from the terrorist state. The world is uniting because they understand children abducted is a red line that Russia has cynically crossed. And for this crime, irreversible accountability must follow for all those involved. I call on all states and institutions that have not yet joined this coalition to take this step without delay. Today, now. The official of the efforts is essential. Only by consolidation our resource and political will can we effectively confront these challenges and protect for the foundation of the civilized world, freedom, human dignity, and the rights to one's own future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dear speakers, thank you both for your very powerful opening remarks. It is now my pleasure to hand over to today's moderator, who will guide us through the rest of the program, Professor Mark Klamberg. For the Swedish audience, Mark needs no introduction. As Professor of Public International Law at Stockholm University and Deputy Director of the Stockholm Center for International Law and Justice, he's a frequent and trusted voice in the media on matters of international law and justice. His expertise reaches far beyond academia. He's affiliated with the Center for International Law Research and Policy, a visiting professor at American University Washington College of Law, and a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C. Closer to the heart of today's topic, he serves as an expert to the Consultative Council of the National School of Judges of Ukraine. He is also a board member of the Raoul Wallenberg Institute and of the Swedish Institute of International Affairs. Mark, very warm welcome, and thank you for being with us today. The floor is yours.
Member of Parliament Wiechel, thank you for the kind introduction. Her Royal Highness, Speakers of Parliament, Excellencies, Members of Parliament and distinguished guests, welcome to this important meeting on abducted Ukrainian children, where I will act as the moderator. As a result of Russia's aggression against Ukraine and illegal occupation of Ukrainian territory since 2014, many violations of international law and crimes have been committed. Among the most serious atrocities is Russia's abduction of children, the theme of this event. This meeting and discussion will underscore the scale and gravity of the unlawful transfer and abduction of Ukrainian children, acts that entail responsibility both for the Russian Federation as a state and the individual perpetrators. The interventions of the panelists will highlight emerging findings from international independent monitoring, the role of multilateral institutions in responding to these violations, and the responsibility of states to secure return, rehabilitation, and accountability. They will also stress the need for coordinated efforts from international mechanisms and sustained political pressure to uphold international law and protect affected children. We will hear a panel of 4 distinguished speakers who in various capacities have worked on creating attention on the abductions with the ultimate aim of having the children returned, demanding accountability and reparations. After their presentations, there will be a panel discussion followed by additional remarks, and if the time allows, questions and remarks from the audience. I will now introduce the speakers. First, Nathaniel A. Raymond, who is the Executive Director of the Humanitarian Research Lab and lecturer at the Yale School of Public Health. His work focuses on health effects of forced displacement, humanitarian response, and use of technology in human rights investigations. He previously founded and directed the Signal Program on Human Security and Technology at Harvard and led the Satellite Sentinel project, which used satellite imagery to document attacks in Sudan. Since 2022, he has worked to help locate abducted children in Ukraine. Next, we have Member of Parliament Þórdís Gylfadóttir, who is the Special Envoy of the Council of Europe, Secretary General on the situation of children of Ukraine since February 2025. She is a lawyer, taught constitutional administrative law at Reykjavik University from 2013 to 2015, and has been a Member of Parliament since 2016. Þórdís was the Vice Chairman of the Independence Party from 2018 till 2025. She was a minister in Iceland for 8 years from 2017 to 2024. Most recently, she served as Minister for Foreign Affairs until 2024. I also want to welcome Member of Parliament Olena Khomenko. She has been a Member of Parliament of Ukraine since 2019. She serves on the Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence. As part of her external affairs activities, she has been a member of the permanent delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, PACE, since January 2020. Olena has also held the position of Vice President of PACE for January 2023 until January 2025. As part of her advocacy activity aimed at returning deported Ukrainian children and protecting the rights of all Ukrainian children affected by Russia's war against Ukraine, she chairs the PACE Parliamentary Network on the situation of the children of Ukraine. I also welcome Member of Parliament Carina Ödebrink. She has been a member of the Swedish Parliament since 2018. Mrs. Ödebrink has been a member of the OSCE PA since 2018. In October 2025, Ödebrink was appointed Special Envoy on Russian abductions and deportations of Ukrainian children. Following her work as Special Rapporteur for the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly Parliamentary Support Team for Ukraine and Rapporteur for the Assembly's Third General Committee since 2024. She authored a report on the issue advocating international cooperation through initiatives such as the International Coalition for the Return of the Ukrainian Children and President Zelensky's Bring Kids Back, UA. I will now give the floor to the speakers. First, it will be Nathaniel Raymond, who will give us some hard facts and the findings of his team at the Humanitarian Research Lab. And we should have a presentation now on the screen.
So much.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to be here. And before I start deluging you in facts, I want to say a thank you. Robert Frost, the American poet, wrote a poem called Choose Something Like a Star. And he said, we grant your loftiness the right to some obscurity of cloud. It will not do to say of night, since dark is what brings out your light. A star in a dark time working on this issue has been Her Majesty Queen Sylvia. And I want to thank you, Your Highness, for everything you've done on this issue. You have been a star, and dark has brought out your light. So, let's do our homework. The Yale Humanitarian Research Lab at the Yale School of Public Health began as a part of the U.S. State Department's Conflict Observatory Program, which was started by President Biden and Secretary Blinken. In February of 2022, we began to stand up even 2 weeks before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Since that time, we have produced many reports on many issues, but we've produced 4 reports specifically on the issue of Ukraine's abducted children. Beginning in February 2023, we first identified a pattern of systematic re-education, abduction, deportation, and adoption of Ukraine's children based on a mission we were given by the U.S. Department of State. Following that, we were tasked with tracking Belarus's role in collaborating with Russia in the deportation of Ukraine's children. But then our most important investigation came in December 2024 when we infiltrated Russia's national adoption websites and databases to discover that Ukrainian quote-unquote orphans were being concealed as if they were Russian children inside Russia's national adoption databases in 3 interconnected database systems. Most recently, our first report since our funding was cut by the Trump administration, which we'll talk about in a moment, we have focused in collaboration with our friends in Ukraine, identifying the network of re-education and militarization in which the children are being not only basically brainwashed, but additionally turned into soldiers. So the impact we've had is we've, in the past 3.5 years, helped catalyze International Criminal Court arrest warrants against President Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova, the basically the architect of Putin's program of forced abduction, the so-called child rights commissioner of Russia. We have provided Ukraine's government, and this is very important, with the number and locations of children abducted to Russia, which we'll unpack in a moment. And we contributed to the U.S. atrocity determination by Secretary Blinken in 2023. We've also supported our colleagues in the European Union and in the U.S. government with specific sanctions targeting, and we have transferred all of our data since our termination by the Trump administration to Europol, who we continue to work closely with on being able to provide those data assets to European law enforcement and intelligence services. Let's do the numbers. Okay, we estimate 35,000 children have been taken since 2022. Now, the Ukrainian number from 2023 is 19,500. And when people hear the difference, they say, why the gap? Well, the main issue is the time. Ukraine's number was based on collection of information in 2022 and was published in 2023. And the government of Ukraine, and I will let them speak for themselves, is currently in the process of updating that count. Our internal estimate, which we are currently working to try to confirm to a high confidence intelligence standard, is we believe at least 35,000 Ukrainian children are or have been in Russia's custody since the full-scale invasion. We have identified as a subset of that 35,000, 314 Ukrainian children listed for adoption or placed in Russian foster families. Now that number is significantly lower than the probable reality, and I want to, as the kids say, drop a hard truth here. One of the challenges in doing this work is that Russian data is booby-trapped. They are, through the GRU and their security services, they are working to detect efforts to find where the children are and to find digital data about the children. What I'm trying to tell you is that we think large corpuses of data about the kids have been destroyed because the Russians have detected efforts by journalists, open source investigators, and law enforcement agencies to find that data. This 314 number is a canary in the coal mine, so to speak, about the broader challenge we face in not having coordinated, professional, integrated tracking and tracing systems done to a highest law enforcement standard, because we could be destroying the only ways to find them. As we identified in our September report, 210 plus locations are holding children in re-education, in militarization, and temporary accommodation facilities. We're going to get more to that in a second. I want to make a point here. Our initial estimate was 110 locations. It was almost 100% larger than our initial estimate. And that's very important to know. The system was bigger and expanding faster than we had ever imagined once we were able to get on target. And Belarus needs also to bear responsibility for this program as an active participant in moving at least 2,400 children to at least 13 facilities. So these numbers speak for themselves. I want to drill in on the last number. We believe 49 of the sites have expanded after February 2022. That means almost out of 210, we're talking almost a quarter of the facilities have grown in size. That is an important indicator about the scale and scope of what is a systematic networked pipeline, okay? Now look at the number above that. We were able to extract documents for 106 of the sites that show they are managed directly by federal agencies in Russia's government that report to the Kremlin. That is a critical indicator of the command and control that Putin exerts over this network. And here's the network. Here's my academic serious comment. Dang, that's big, okay? This network of camps stretches 3,500 miles from the Black Sea to the Eastern Pacific. Elements of this network are closer to Japan and Alaska than to Kyiv and Moscow. This is the single largest abduction of children since the Nazis in World War II. And in many elements of this system, you'll notice Siberia is on the map. They have reactivated Stalin's pioneer program of child re-education from the Soviet era. That is not by accident. Now, when we collected satellite reconnaissance data over the locations, this was the image, and it may not leap out at you, that made my heart stop. And I'm looking at you, Mr. Speaker, Dr. Stefanchuk. This, for me, as someone who cares like you do so much about Ukraine's children, was horrifying. This is a military training site on a military base where we know Ukrainian children have been and have been trained to be soldiers. What you see here are trench lines. I want you to look at the one in the middle with the squiggly lines and the shapes. Why that is horrifying for us is that it resembles the current construction of the evolved front line since the introduction of FPV, first-person view drones, in the war on the front line. They are training them in current frontline combat conditions. You'll notice the straight line to the side. That's how they used to do the trenches. Now they do them with zigzags. That is a critical clue. Now, I want to be mindful of time here, but this is important for you to see. Each of the kids we identify has about 30 to 40-page dossiers for each of them. Given the fact that we do not show the pictures of the children publicly, some information here has been de-identified, including this boy, Oriol's face. But this is his cover sheet on his dossier that was transferred to the Ukrainian government. You can see here that it is rich with chain of custody information necessary for both returning him, negotiating for his return, but also for prosecuting his perpetrators of his abduction. Let's dig deeper. In each of the files is an itinerary timeline for each kid. You'll notice that events and locations have been de-identified for security purposes. Why? Because we're constantly under attack by Russia's security services who want to know what we know. And so we want to make sure if our communiques about the children are intercepted in transit, that they can't know all the locations and event files that we have. That's the level of seriousness we're talking about here. We track the vehicles and logistics infrastructure from space used to move these children. This was the most important find we had. This is one of President Putin's personal presidential planes from the Presidential Air Wing, call sign Tu-154, it's a Tupolev, and using the SLO Rossiya livery used of the President of Russia. They made a boo-boo when they took propaganda photos because we caught the BORT number off the side of the plane. That allowed us to get air traffic control data on its transponder signal, and we tracked it from space. Here is the plane on the tarmac. You'll also see in the black and white image, this is the most important thing I'm going to show you, 3 Ilyushin 76s that have offloaded a cargo. Look closely in the box. See those black specks? We caught the offloading of children onto buses. This is what it's about, ladies and gentlemen. So, what Russia is doing is a whole-of-government effort to abduct, to re-educate, to Russify, and to militarize the children of Ukraine. If we cannot act on this matter, then what matter can we ever act to address? So, I want to leave you with this. Right now, my team and I, we face imminent termination on the 25th of December. When we go dark, our support for the Ukrainian government goes dark as well. Since we were terminated by the Trump administration and then reinstated and then terminated again, we have relied on online donations mostly from angry grandmothers in the United States who have kept us alive with the help of Hillary Clinton advocating for us online. That money is running out. We are continuing to try to keep the lights on, but we're in our last month of operation, and we're in the midst of helping our Ukrainian colleagues finish the count that they need as negotiators meet in Geneva to ensure that any deal that ends this war is done with the best intelligence necessary to ensure every child goes home.
Thank you very much. Now we have received some hard facts and also an indication what needs to be done. I will now give the floor to Member of Parliament Þórdís Gylfadóttir.
Thank you very much, Your Majesty. Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for gathering here today. It is a privilege to be here and to join you in this important and solemn discussion. It is now almost 4 years since Russia launched its full-scale war of aggression against Ukraine. 4 years may feel like a long time for adults, full of meetings, deadlines, and political cycles. But for a child, 4 years is a lifetime. It is the difference between learning to speak and learning to read. The difference between learning to dream and learning to doubt. And while time has moved on for the rest of the world, for the children of Ukraine, time has not moved at all. It has stopped at the moment of rupture, the moment of loss, separation, and fear. Behind every diplomatic text, behind every communique, and every headline, there is a child whose world has been violently broken. A child whose room in Ukraine has remained untouched for years. A school desk that stands empty beside classmates who do not know if they should hold on to hope or learn to say goodbye. A family that wakes every morning into silence, wondering where their child has been taken, what has been done to them, whether they will ever hold them again. No parent anywhere should have to endure that silence. No child anywhere should have their identity treated as something that can be removed, rewritten, or replaced. The abduction and forcible transfer of children is one of the most devastating wounds inflicted by this war. It is not an accidental side effect. It is not collateral damage. It is deliberate, it is systematic, and it is strategic from the top and down. Children have been torn from their families, communities, and the land whose language they learned to speak their first words. They have been taken far away, placed into a systems designed to reshape their memories, told to forget their language, and the roots. Some of them return unsure whether they are allowed to love the country that raised them, whether they may speak the language that once felt natural, unsure even who they are meant to become. Others come back carrying guilt, believing they have betrayed Ukraine by speaking the words adults forced them to repeat. This is trauma that cannot be measured in months or years. It reshapes the architecture of a child's mind and determines how they learn, how they build trust, how they form relationship, how they grow into adulthood. It is trauma that, if left unaddressed, becomes an inheritance, passed from one generation to the next, a silent wound shaping an entire nation's future. This we know from history and from today. And so when we speak about reconstruction, we must remember it is not enough to rebuild bridges, energy infrastructure, and roads. A nation is not made of concrete. A nation is made of its people, its families, its children, its future. If we fail these children, we fail Ukraine. If we fail Ukraine's children, we fail Europe. If we fail Europe, we fail ourselves. The Council of Europe is at the forefront of efforts to support these children, including through an effective accountability response. The European Court of Human Rights, in a landmark judgment on July 9th of this year, held Russia responsible for the unlawful deportation of children to Russia and, in many cases, their illegal adoption there. The Register of Damage recently opened a claim category for the forcible transfer or deportation of children. Formally recognizing these acts as heinous crimes is a first crucial step in addressing the debilitating harm caused to these children. Through its action plan for Ukraine, the Council of Europe is also more generally supporting Ukraine in its recovery and reconstruction, a plan in which children play a central role. The Council of Europe Consultation Group on the Children of Ukraine, the CGU, was set up by the Council of Europe in 2023 as an emergency response, acting as an important peer review platform and rapid response mechanism to enhance the protection of children of Ukraine, wherever they are. During my visit to Ukraine, I met children who had returned after living through the most harrowing experiences. They were echoes of a wound that cuts across an entire generation. And when we listen to these children, we hear their plea, not only to be returned to safety, but to be seen, heard, and believed. Not only to come home, but to heal, and not only to survive, but to live and trust again. Healing through trauma-informed care, this is something that the consultation group is particularly concretely focusing on by providing support and capacity building to frontline professionals working with children who have experienced deep trauma. Ladies and gentlemen, the plight of abducted Ukrainian children is not a concern for Ukraine alone. It is a concern for every country represented here. It is a concern for every society that believes in the rule of law, in human dignity, in childhood itself. It is crucial for our own interest, because if we allow children to be treated as objects, instruments, to be traded or silenced, then we surrender something essential about what it means to be human. This is why unity and solidarity matters, and this is why moral courage matters. The safe return of these children is not only a legal imperative, it is a moral responsibility that defines who we are and what we stand for. And when these children return, their journey does not end at the border. Healing is not something that happens automatically or accidentally. Trauma does not disappear when a child is physically home. Healing requires time, safety, and patience. Trauma-informed care and a community that refuses to look away. Trauma-informed care is not an abstract concept. It is the first building block of justice, and without justice, peace is an illusion. And that is an extremely important message these days. This is why accountability and trauma-informed care are the central priorities of my mandate. We need to rebuild these children's future. As this war rolls into its 4th year, let us be clear. There will be no sustainable peace without accountability. There will be no credible reconstruction without healing. There will be no justice unless the suffering of the most vulnerable, the children, is addressed openly and with courage. We must ensure that when Ukraine is rebuilt, it is rebuilt not only in its infrastructure, but in its humanity and future. Not only in its institutions, but in its hearts. Not only in its economy, but the future of its children. That is the true meaning of rebuilding a nation. And so I call on all nations, all organizations, and all partners represented here today to unite around one simple, powerful principle. Every child has the right to safety. Every child has the right to identity. Every child has the right to family. Every child has the right to come home. Not someday, not eventually, but now, because every day that passes deepens the wounds, and we must later struggle to heal. Time is not a luxury that Ukraine or its children possesses. The children of Ukraine did not choose this war. They did not choose to have their identities rewritten or their futures stolen. But we can choose here today to stand with them. So let us leave this meeting not with polite expressions of sympathy, but with determination. Not with silence, but with a loud voice. And not with hesitation, but with unity. Let our shared resolve echo louder than the noise of propaganda and stronger than the threat of violence. Every child matters. Every child deserves to dream. Every child deserves a future. And every child must come home. And for that to happen, I have to add, after an excellent presentation from Nathaniel Raymond, that if we mean that it is a priority to make sure that the Russian Federation will be held accountable, we have to make sure that that project continues for us to be able to do the rest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, MP Gylfadóttir. I will now hand over the floor to Member of Parliament Olena Khomenko, please.
Your Majesty, dear ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers, it is an honor for me to be here today. I feel quite a responsibility being the only Ukrainian speaker at this panel. That is why today I would like to speak about the most important, the situation on the ground. Because when we hear about Ukrainian children stolen by Russia in numbers and legal terms, we cannot even imagine what a child actually lives through under occupation and abduction. I would like to tell you about the environment these children are facing every day. Children in the occupied territories live under constant pressure to forget who they are. Their language is taken first. They are told to switch to Russian only. Ukrainian books disappear from schools. And even casual Ukrainian word can lead to humiliation. Then comes rewriting of their identity. Children are told their country no longer exists, that their parents abandoned them, that Ukraine never cared about them. Many are separated from their families during so-called medical checkups or rehabilitation or summer camps, and some simply never return. Others are placed in institutions where the message is always the same: your past is gone, your future belongs to Russia. All of them are pressured to take Russian documents, because without them they may be denied medical care or even the right to move around their own town. From kindergarten onward, they are immersed in propaganda and militarization. This is not accidental, but it's a state policy driven from the very top. Schools and youth programs glorify war, teach military drills. The invasion as a defense of the is positioned as the defense of the motherland, calling it a moral duty for these children. More than half of the children interviewed upon rescue described this indoctrination firsthand. An estimated number of 600,000 Ukrainian school children in occupied territories now study under Russian curriculum with a mandatory weekly program named Conversations about Important Things that glorify Russian soldiers and denies Ukraine's statehood. A new subject, fundamentals of security and defense of the homeland, includes actual weapons training. Children are forced to march, write letters to Russian soldiers, and abandon their language and flag. Teachers and parents who resist this face intimidation, dismissal, and sometimes torture. The same patterns continues in the camps. Children describe being pushed through military drills, psychological pressure, and constant surveillance. Parents were tricked into signing documents for recreational camp only to discover that these children had been moved deeper into Russia and Belarus. Some children were allowed only one supervised 20-minute call with their parents a week. The occupation prepares teenagers for early conscription. Some 16 and 17-year-olds were issued military summonses. Others found their personal data had been transferred automatically to Russian military officers. And alongside militarization, occupation authorities also impose their own sexual education norms, motivating girls to give birth to their own children in young age. Let me show you what this looks like through the eyes of the children Ukraine succeeded to bring home. A 17-year-old girl from the Kherson region told us that militarization became a part of her daily life. Children were trained to handle weapons and asked to choose a military specialization. In the evening, they practiced mining and demining, learned to throw grenades, and studied anti-tank explosives. As she put it, these were real drills, not just lessons. A teenager from Zaporizhia region said that in schools the military training course Warrior is included in the curriculum with 300 hours of training. Another boy of 19 years old who studied at school learned that school management had transferred all the personal data of students to the military enlistment office, and all of them in absentia were put on military registration. Later, he was given a summons to perform military service in the Russian army. Another recently rescued boy described how Russian soldiers came to his school to carry out what they called a survey. They asked students, how do you feel about killing? And do you like beating people? Followed by, what do you want to be? A tank operator or a pilot? When the boy refused to participate and asked why that was happening, a soldier told him, yeah, I'll take you first, you will serve on a submarine. The picture that emerges from these testimonies is painfully clear. This is not one type of abuse, but the system built to reshape children's identities, break their trust, and prepare them psychologically and practically for future service in the Russian armed forces. None of these things fit neatly in the regulations we currently have in international law. International law was developed to prevent children from being used directly in warfare as soldiers and human shields. But today, an occupying power can reshape child's identity, language, worldview, and loyalty long before a weapon is ever placed in their hands. And law is almost silent about these earlier stages. We need international law to reflect reality, to recognize that when a state systematically indoctrinates children, exposes them to military teaching, and destroys their cultural identity, this is a part of the machinery of aggression. It is preparation for war, using children as a raw material and it must be treated accordingly. We also need the law to clearly protect a child's identity, their name, language, and cultural belonging. We need an explicit ban on adopting children from occupied territories by families from occupying power. And any evacuation from occupied territories must be supervised by independent international actor, so it cannot be misused as a cover for deportation. These changes are drawn from what Ukrainian children are living through right now. They are needed to make sure any occupying power can never use these methods without accountability. And it is our responsibility to ensure that international law is strong enough to protect them and to bring every child home. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Khomenko. I will now hand over to Special Envoy Carina Ödebrink, please.
Thank you. Your Majesty, speakers, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly honored to be here today to discuss this vital issue. The situation for the abducted Ukrainian children is more urgent than ever. The scale and systemization of these abductions carried out since the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014 and escalating after the full-scale invasion in 2022 are unprecedented in modern times. What we see is the cynical extension of the Russian Federation's imperialist war. The capturing of Ukrainian children is an attempt to hold the future of Ukraine hostage. We will not let them succeed. Meeting here today gives us the opportunity to discuss concrete measures to prevent further abductions, ensure the safe reintegration of returned children, and secure the unconditional return of all abducted Ukrainian children. As the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Humanitarian Issues within the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and the newly appointed Special Envoy on the situation of Ukrainian children, I have focused extensively on this matter. At this year's OSCE's annual summer session in Porto, I presented a comprehensive report calling on OSCE parliamentarians and international organizations to intensify cooperation with Ukrainian authorities, strengthen and expand international coalitions, ensure peace and ceasefire negotiations, include provisions for the safe return of abducted children, and call on the OSCE executive structures to invoke the Moscow mechanism to support investigations into Russia's actions. Our Parliamentary Assembly will continue to use its influence and networks to engage governments and OSCE structures, keeping this issue at the forefront of the international agenda. Reintegration is not just about restoring identity and rights. It is about reconnecting children with their families, rebuilding sense of belonging, and ensuring long-term psychological and social support. This work must be carried out both in the short and in the long term, and I'm genuinely pleased that our Assembly can contribute to deeper international cooperation in support of Ukraine. To advance these goals, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is following the appeal from President Zelensky, preparing to join the international coalition for the return of Ukrainian children, which brings together over 40 countries, 2 international organizations, the European Union and the Council of Europe. Established in 2024 by Ukraine and Canada, the coalition strengthens global cooperation and the exchange of experience to make reintegration as effective and human as possible. This week, I will meet with representatives from Ukraine's National Social Service and Sweden's National Board of Health and Welfare to discuss ways to strengthen reintegration and address emerging challenges. But, dear colleagues and Your Majesty, let me be clear. One of my main messages today is renewed funding for institutions like the Yale University Humanitarian Research Lab. This is absolutely instrumental. Their research sheds light on the scale and patterns of abductions and provides evidence to advance accountability. In order to track and keep registers over the current location of the abducted children, as well as to hold those to account who are responsible for these crimes. We need their expertise, so I urge the US government to restore funding which was cancelled in March, and to support evidence-based strategies, share expertise, and enhance reintegration efforts. Ultimately, reintegration is not just a humanitarian responsibility, it is a moral imperative. And in everything we do, we must be absolutely clear the children must be brought home. And the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and the best interests of the child must guide all our actions. This is entirely in line with the ultimate objective of the Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children. What we need now is leadership, coordination, and courage. Those of you participating here today are crucial voices for these children. With collective effort and sustained cooperation, the international community must ensure the return of these children, help them heal, rebuild their futures, and reclaim the dignity that was unjustly taken from them. So thank you once again for meeting here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Special Envoy Ödebrink. So I will now turn to some questions and a discussion here in the panel. I will start here with a question for you, Director Raymond. Your data clearly shows the scale and systematic nature of Russia's abductions of Ukrainian children, and I mean, shows the responsibility of the Russian Federation as a state. In one of your last slides, you had pictures of several persons in the Russian leadership, as I understood. So besides the responsibility of Russia as a state, can you say something about, are you also looking at individuals and what their responsibilities are for these actions?
Thank you. That's such a critical question because it allows me to quickly talk about two things that don't get enough attention when we talk about Ukraine's abducted children. There's obviously a lot of focus on the top of that pyramid I showed you. In the middle, I want to call out the role of the Minister of Education and the Ministry of Education. We have to understand that if you are running basically a network of concentration camps and basically safe houses for children at the scale of 35,000, it takes a large amount of logistical support. The guts of that logistical network really falls in many ways to the Ministry of Education. And they're both running a primary database. They're also doing housing and coordination of the movements of the children. And so in that we'll call senior middle management level is really the Ministry of Education. The other point here is that the security services are involved, and we've been able to prove that. And I want to talk a little bit about specific roles of certain security services. There's a lot we don't know. We are now understanding that there are incidents, specifically in the case of Kherson, where FSB, internal Russian security service, was allegedly involved in the specific abduction of children, some of whom were infants, from a baby home, not the one that you've seen the video of, a second alleged location. And so we also see the role, the central role at that security service level of the investigative committee, which is sort of Russia's ersatz answer to the FBI. The investigative committee plays a role in targeting and grooming, basically, at the school level in temporarily occupied territories, cohorts of children for introduction into things like Cadet Corps, which is basically a military youth training program. The last point I want to make here is that we also have the involvement of a variety of individuals we have not named ever on the local level. That in temporarily occupied territories, you have a significant degree of coercion, and this was referenced by Olena in terms of the falsified or invalid consent forms, in the sense that we have teachers and community leaders often in a position where they are pushing this, quote, recreation camp that is a pipeline into the program. In many cases, we have not identified those individuals because of fear of reprisal. What is important to understand here is that this entire system relies on coercion, and in the case of the consent forms, relies on deception, and that happens at a local level.
Thank you very much. I will now turn to Special Envoy Gylfadóttir. Russia was excluded as a member from the Council of Europe in 2022. What kind of means does the Council of Europe and its institutions have, if any, to directly pressure Russia on this matter?
Well, the honest answer is, of course, it is limited because we are not in, formally direct dialogue with the Russians. And therefore, it is also important that we have, not that the OSCE on the parliamentary level is that either, but Russia is part of the OSCE, for example, not the Council of Europe. So what the main priorities of the Council of Europe is to support Ukraine through all possible means in capacity building, financial support, infrastructure in Ukraine, with NGOs, with institutions, on the well-being of Ukrainian children, wherever they are, of course. Not only the unlawfully abducted children, but also the children inside Ukraine and the children that now live in the member states. But with the creation of this position, that is mainly about raising awareness, to attend events like these, other forms, other kinds, try to connect individuals, different organizations and bodies to work together and to cooperate, because we all have the same goal and we all have the will, but we have to make sure that we are cooperating in the best possible ways. Then we are in desperate need of more political attention, both from political leaders, and I've been, just yesterday when Ursula von der Leyen, with her statement, was very concrete and frank about this focus point, which is crucial, and especially now these days where, people are talking about any form of peace negotiations. Obviously, this has to be in the center of it. It also needs more media attention, because if all human beings would know that this is happening, the scale of it and the facts behind it, it would change the narrative, not only with regards to the stolen children, but also on Ukraine as a whole, and the need to support Ukraine with whatever needed for them to win the war and for Russia to lose it. That is crucial for both friends and allies of Ukraine, also more neutral countries. They are more neutral towards the war, but they still understand how fundamentally wrong it is to steal other people's children. So therefore, that I would say that's what we can do. And we have to build on what we are doing, but we also have to think outside the box and be creative in finding ways to push and to keep this on the agenda.
Thank you very much. I will now turn to MP Khomenko. During Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine, there's many violations and atrocities that have been committed. The issue of abducted children have attracted particular attention, not least by this event, and condemnation. And it's obvious to all us why this is, but I still want to ask you why the matter of abducted children deserves particular attention among all the atrocities committed.
Russia has been committing thousands of crimes in Ukraine, but this is the most appalling crime. Why this is important, why it matters, why it deserves particular attention, because when we speak to children who were rescued, they are psychologically damaged, and they have the fear of rejection, the sense that their identity has tampered with, and also this is the fact that Russia prepares these children not to live in peace, but they prepare them to live in war. They prepare them for future conflicts. They prepare them to be the weapon in their hands. And Russia presents and describes West as an enemy, and European and NATO member states as the targets. So they also impose on children that sacrifice on for the motherland washes away all sins. So this is a matter, this is alarming, not for Ukraine only, but for all European democratic states. This is the matter of regional and global security, because these children will be turned into weapons one day against European countries.
Thank you. And I will continue with another question for you. During the last 2 years, I've been 3 times in Ukraine, and I've witnessed the significant work that is done within Ukraine to bring about accountability in your own domestic courts for prosecuting war crimes. It's also the fact that the ICC has issued 2 arrest warrants against President Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova for the abduction of children. There has been a conviction in the Helsinki District Court, not for abduction of children, but for other war crimes committed by Russian paramilitary. My question is, where will accountability for these atrocities happen? In The Hague, in the domestic courts of Ukraine, courts in other European countries, or all of the above? Maybe a leading question, but please. Where would you like justice to happen?
The answer is that accountability must and must happen on multiple levels. Ukrainian courts are building cases. They have full access to evidences. They have testimonies from families and children. So these crimes have been committed on Ukrainian soil, and we will bring perpetrators to accountability. But at the same time, ICC has made an unprecedented step and issued arrest warrants for Putin and Lvova-Belova. And also there is another layer that is universal jurisdiction, especially in European states. And we already know about Helsinki case. We know that Germany and other countries are investigating and building other cases. So it is not just the question of one courtroom. It should be implemented on all the levels.
Thank you very much. I will now turn to Special Envoy Ödebrink. In your report on abducted children, you mention one of the OSCE institutions, the so-called Moscow mechanism. There has been 5 Moscow mechanisms investigating various atrocities committed by Russia in Ukraine. The third one was on abducted children. In your report, you urged the OSCE executive structures to invoke the Moscow mechanism again for further investigations into Russian Federation's abductions. What are you thinking of here? Could you please elaborate? Is it a follow-up to the previous Moscow mechanism mission, or should they do something else?
Thank you for the question. And let me just say, to start, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly is a consensus-based organization, so we need to be collectively agree on all decisions. But when it comes to the Moscow mechanism, some countries can start by investigating something to control that a country really acts in line with our commitments and our values. And that has been done several times when it comes to Ukraine. And there was a report, I think it's 2.5 years ago now. So I think it's important to follow up what has happened. A lot has happened since the last report. The scale and the pattern of the deportations have changed, and new evidence has emerged from the Yale Humanitarian Research Lab and Ukrainian authorities. And I think that a new mission could update facts, identify responsible structures, individuals, and propose concrete steps for repatriation and accountability. The intention is not to repeat previous work to build on existing documentation and give the international community an updated action-oriented basis. Several participating states could jointly request such a mission under the Moscow mechanism. So I think that's why I see the need of another report on the Moscow mechanism.
Thank you very much. I will now turn to Director Raymond again. You showed already a little bit in your slides how your information is used, but could you please tell us what will happen if your work needs to stop at the 25th of December? Which organizations, entities, or recipients will lose information that they're having today?
Well, the good news is that Europol has been able to be a critical partner for us in making sure the data is secure. We also have transferred the critical underlying data to the International Criminal Court and have ensured the International Criminal Court has everything they need from us if we expire in the coming month. Really, your question hits an important pivot we've made as an organization. We started on an accountability and law enforcement mission, like homicide detectives or local beat cops. And that turned from basically a crime scene type investigation into being engaged in hostage rescue, like SWAT. And so we're now in a very different posture where our focus agreed with the Ukrainians. Yes, we are collecting evidence for accountability, but our goal now went from accountability to return. We have to speed the return of these children through direct rescue missions, negotiation, any which way we can. That's the goal now. It's not measured in indictments, it's measured in returnees. And so to get to the core of your question, who's going to suffer the most? Well, Ukraine's children is going to suffer the most because this isn't about Yale. I will be a barista at Starbucks happily, okay? But we're needed right now to ensure that the speed of return with our Ukrainian partners is as fast as it can be. And so we would love someone else to take the mission. Right now, we're the only game in town. Over.
Thank you very much. I will direct the last question to MP Khomenko. And what is the single most important measure that other states than Ukraine can take in order to protect the interests of abducted Ukrainian children?
If I had to name The most important measures, it's strengthening sanctions and also financial pressure on everyone involved into deportations, because this is the network of individuals and organizations. They can travel freely to European states. They can seek for medical services, they can go to study, and we need harmonized sanctions policies, so no one will escape from this pressure. And also, this is very important to ensure compensation and real support for children who return from deportations. We need states to help us with this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will open up the floor a little bit now, and I would like to invite the Member of Parliament Tamila Tashevan, who's the head of the Subcommittee on Restoration of State Authority and Local Self-Government in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, and the city of Sevastopol, of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on Organization of State Authority, Local Self-Government, Regional Development and Urban Planning. Please, MP Tashevan, if you could join us here.
Your Majesty, Excellencies, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak at such an important event. Today I speak not only as a representative of Ukraine, but on behalf of thousands of families whose children have been forcibly taken by Russia. The well-being and future of children should be the first priority of any state. But Russia is stealing this future from Ukrainian children and from Ukraine as whole. Those children are taken from all temporarily occupied territories, including Crimea, often far into the Russian Federation. They are placed in camps, in institutions, or in Russian families. Many are adopted under fast-track procedures, given Russian passport, and told they were never Ukrainian. They are cut off from their parents, relative, language, and own culture. They are pushed to forget Ukrainian, to change their names, to accept a new identity. Russia calls this protection and care. It is not care. It is a systematic policy of forced assimilation and identity erasure, a direct violation of international law. We all remember the public statement of Maria Lvova-Belova, the so-called Russian Commissioner for Children's Rights, who openly described how she took a boy from Mariupol to Russia. She said that at first stage he sang Ukrainian songs and said, "I love Ukraine," and did not want to live in Russia. And how, after her quiet education, he changed. This is a direct confession of abduction, forced Russification, and psychological violence against a child. Let me give one more example. At the end of 2022, children from 2 institutions in the Kherson region were taken to occupied Crimea to a place called Yalinka, and then further into Russia. Ukraine appointed legal guarantees for those children. Our authorities officially demanded their return. Russia ignored those demands. Part of these children have already been given to Russian families. This is not a mistake, but an organized system. We thank for all efforts of our allies, but we must honestly say our efforts are still not enough. We urgently need Russia to provide full and verified list of all children taken from Ukrainian territory. We need access for independent international organizations to monitor where these children are and what condition they live, and to help prepare their return. We also need stronger political and diplomatic pressure. Return of stolen children must be one of the central points of any peace agreement. No peace with Russia is possible while thousands of children remain illegally kept, re-educated, and used as a tool of propaganda. And we must remember the root cause. All those crimes, deportation, illegal adaptation, camps in occupied Crimea, forced Russification are possible only because of the occupation itself. As long as Russia controls Ukrainian territories, our children there will be in danger. Those children cannot wait. We ask you continue your support to raise their cases in every international forum to help us bring each of them home. Thank you.
I would also like to invite the Ambassador of Germany to Sweden, His Excellency Ludger Siems, to do an intervention. You can do it at the chair, so you just put on the microphone. Please, the floor is yours.
Professor Klamberg, thank you very much for giving me the floor. Your Majesty, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, Speakers and Members of Parliament, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The Federal Republic of Germany is a fully committed member of the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children. If anything, the killing, abduction, indoctrination, violence against Ukrainian children underscores the true purpose and monstrosity of Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine. We welcome the US commitment to end this war and to work further on the contents of the 28 points plan. In this context, we continue to stand with Ukraine in full solidarity to achieve just and lasting peace. As work remains to be done, the most vulnerable groups must remain in focus. We have to make sure that the abducted Ukrainian children can return home swiftly. And those crimes cannot go unpunished. Germany supports and undertakes evidence gathering and criminal prosecution, as well as supports the International Criminal Court in its efforts to investigate the ones responsible for these terrible crimes. To alleviate the pain inflicted by Russia, Germany also supports the reintegration of children who have already returned to Ukraine. In short, the Federal Republic of Germany will continue its support within the coalition and to raise its voice loud and clear to keep the fate of the Ukrainian children on the world's agenda. Again, Russia must return these children to Ukraine immediately. Thank you all for working to achieve this goal.
Thank you very much. We have time for one more intervention from the floor, if there is interest. Well, I will now conclude. I want to thank the panel especially for your work previously and now, and the interventions made here. Let us give them a round of applause. I will now hand over the floor to Member of Parliament Johan Büser, member of the Swedish delegation to the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. Please.
Thank you for that. Your Majesty, Mr. Speaker, distinguished guests and honorable fellow parliamentarians, and last but not least, our outstanding speakers here today. Let me extend my deepest gratitude for your presence, your commitment, and your invaluable contributions to this crucial discussion. The work you are leading to bring abducted Ukrainian children back to their families and back to Ukraine is nothing short of vital. For justice, for accountability, and for the future of a free and sovereign Ukraine. We are short on time now, so I will keep this brief, but I want to say this clearly. Thank you for standing with these children, with their parents, and with the principles that unites us here today. Before we conclude, I kindly ask you and all guests to rise and remain standing until Her Majesty the Queen and the Speaker have left the chamber. And with that, I warmly invite all of you to continue this important conversation at the reception outside this hall in the Grand Gallery. Thank you.
Now